Everyone says raising children ensures support in old age, and that the original spouse is the best. I used to think so too. Unfortunately, when I was left paralyzed in bed after a car accident, my devoted husband decided to make up for the regrets of his youth by reuniting with his first love. My eldest son, whom I valued most, took the initiative to arrange a grand wedding banquet for his father, celebrating with all the guests, relatives, and friends at the wedding smiled and joked. Wishing the lovers who once parted like the swallow and the lark would finally unite in marriage, the youngest son, whom I loved the most, was off somewhere with his dubious friends, indulging in who knows what. Only my eldest daughter, who had cut ties with me 20 years ago, took me in and cared for me upon hearing the news. Until my death, my daughter never gave me a single smile, but as I closed my eyes, I saw her reddened eyes. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day that changed my daughter's life. It was also the 1980s, a turning point in many people's lives. Suddenly, a sharp headache struck, and I instinctively raised my hand to press against it. A familiar yet stern voice rang in my ears. "Young lady, what's the use of reading so many books? Marriage and having children are the right path. When you're older, it won't be so easy to find a husband." It was the voice of my long-deceased father-in-law. Accompanied by the heavy thud of a cane striking the ground, I abruptly opened my eyes, staring in disbelief at the cramped old house before me and the so-called family members who felt both familiar and strange. The town's carpenter makes an honest living with his skills. What part of him isn't good enough for you? My mother-in-law scolded angrily, glaring at me as she spoke. "I told your mother long ago not to send you to school for so many years. It's made your heart wild." My daughter's hair was disheveled, her eyes red and swollen, with a bright red slap mark on her face. Yet she lifted her head stubbornly, refusing to utter a word. "Would your own father ever harm you?" Ezra Jong, accustomed to being a teacher, spoke in a stern tone. "If you don't believe me, ask your mother." The man is just a bit older, but anyone can see he'd be a caring husband. As he spoke, he shot me a meaningful glance. Our daughter naturally noticed, the moment her eyes met mine. She immediately looked away, silently expressing her refusal. Though panic was already evident in her gaze, it finally dawned on me. My daughter was only 17 at the time. Without consulting me or my husband, my in-laws had arranged her marriage to a 30-year-old carpenter in town for a bride price of 4,000 yuan, all to fund their younger son's wedding. I didn't want to, but I couldn't resist my husband's firm resolve. Just moments ago, because our daughter had talked back to her grandparents, I had slapped her. Seeing me hesitate, my husband immediately pushed me, furious and exasperated. "This is the fine daughter you raised. Aren't you going to discipline her?" The push sent me stumbling, face to face with my daughter. My daughter trembled all over, instinctively stepping back, yet she straightened her back, tears welling in her eyes. "Mom, hit me if you must, even if you beat me to death. I won't marry him." The eyes of everyone in the room turned toward me, silently pressuring me. A whirlwind of emotions surged in my heart, my eyes growing warm, until I finally spoke. "Yes, we won't marry her off." "Ah, that's more like it," father-in-law said with a hint of satisfaction, then suddenly realized something was amiss and sprang up from his chair. "What did you say?" The people in the room abruptly looked up, staring at me in disbelief. But I only looked at my equally shocked daughter and repeated word by word, "We won't marry you off. If you want to study, then study. If you want to take the college entrance exam, then take it. Whatever you want to do, Mom will support you." As I spoke, I reached out a trembling hand, wanting to touch my daughter's face, but ultimately lowered it and asked cautiously, "Can you forgive Mom?" It was as if my daughter only truly understood at that moment. The tears she had been holding back suddenly streamed down her face as she threw her head back and wailed, as though she had suffered the greatest injustice. I fought back my own tears and reached out to hug her, only to hear a barrage of insults and accusations behind me. "Fine, fine. What kind of wife did you marry? You're the man. How can a woman rule the household?" My father-in-law glared furiously. Mother-in-law grabbed the nearby cane belonging to father-in-law and threw it to her husband. "Son, you hit her. A woman will obey after a beating." The husband raised the cane and was actually about to strike. "Mom, be careful," the daughter cried out. I grabbed the cane and yanked it away forcefully. My husband never expected me to fight back. He staggered a few steps, his eyes wide with shock, tall but frail, He couldn't carry a load on his shoulders or lift anything with his hands. No match for me at all, my mother-in-law cursed angrily. I always said women who come knocking on doors are cheap, worthless trash, utterly unacceptable. My father-in-law pounded his chest in frustration. Like mother, like daughter, divorce this shrew at once. Don't let her ruin our Zhong family's reputation. Throw her out immediately. My husband was still standing there in a daze, not yet recovered from my earlier resistance. I sneered, divorce me. Don't you know the Qing dynasty has fallen? Keep spouting this feudal nonsense and see if the party doesn't come knocking tomorrow to have a word with you. A whole family of feudal relics. At this, they all fell silent, as quiet as cicadas in winter. Ezra Zhong was furious when he saw my relentless resistance for the first time, glaring at me with anger. He is extremely filial to a foolish degree. In his heart, what matters most is his pride, followed by every member of the Zhong family. In my past life, I had already paid the price for my foolishness. I always prioritized his opinions, yielding and respecting him in every way. Unfortunately, someone like him has a heart that cannot be warmed, or perhaps, he simply has no heart at all. Ezra Zhong angrily retorted, Wang Huihuan, who allowed you to speak to your parents-in-law like that? Do you even have the slightest awareness of how a daughter-in-law should behave? A girl's marriage should naturally be decided by her elders. Do you think everyone is like you, throwing yourself at men without any shame or propriety? Even though I had long known his true nature, his words still stung. Ezra Zhong is gentle and refined, wearing glasses and quite handsome at the time. I was the one who pursued him and took the initiative to marry him. Now, it has become his leverage against me. My daughter anxiously grabbed my hand, her eyes red with worry. I patted her hand in return to comfort her. At the same time, I turned to look at Ezra Zhong and said word by word, this is the new China. I can marry you, and I can also leave you. Tomorrow I'll report to the organization. We're getting divorced. After delivering my ultimatum at my in-laws' house, I took my daughter by the hand and walked away. Gazing at the familiar streets and alleys of the 1980s, I trembled with excitement. I had never imagined I'd get a second chance. This year, I am 40 years old, not exactly young. But compared to someone who is 80 and bedridden, I am in my prime, at the best age. Similarly, my 17-year-old daughter is also at her best age. More importantly, I have not yet ruined my daughter's life with my own foolishness, and there is still a chance to make amends. The early 1980s marked the beginning of China's transition from a planned economy to a market economy, yet most ordinary people still regard collective units and state sector employment as the only proper path. Some who tentatively ventured into small businesses achieved some success, but were still looked down upon by many. At that time, I was a worker in a shoe factory. The production floor work was grueling every day, but the work unit had allocated me housing. My husband was also a teacher. Both of us had what were considered proper jobs, so life was relatively comfortable. There are 3 children in the family, with the eldest son and eldest daughter just a year apart. And the youngest son only 10 years old, all still in school, compared to my siblings still toiling in the fields and my sisters who married into difficult lives. My days are quite comfortable. I cherish this life dearly and have grown accustomed to making various concessions to my husband, sacrificing our small family to uphold his dignity in front of his parents. After all, despite the continuous progress and development of societal ideas, the traditional notions in my mind remain deeply ingrained. Once married, one should follow the husband's lead, whether he's a chicken or a dog, and in old age, the original couple is always the best. Of course, sons are more important than daughters at home. After all, raising sons ensures support in old age. For the sake of the happy life I envisioned, this year, I sacrificed my daughter's entire future. I remember in my past life, my daughter ultimately couldn't resist the family's pressure and married the carpenter. Within 2 years, she was already filing for divorce. Divorce would subject a woman to being drowned in a sea of scornful gossip. When my daughter returned to her parents' home, the entire family opposed her decision to divorce. She wept uncontrollably, gasping for breath, and showed me her arms covered in bruises, some blue, others purple, though my heart ached for my daughter. My husband adamantly opposed the divorce, and in the end, I could only advise her to endure it a little longer. She even took her son to make a scene at the carpenter's house, feeling she had stood up for her daughter. See, a married woman still needs brothers. But from then on, her daughter rarely visited home. And even when she did, she seldom spoke to her alone. She knew her daughter resented her. But isn't this how all women go through life? Later, my daughter eloped with someone without a word, instantly becoming the laughingstock of the neighborhood, and the authorities kept coming to our door for talks. Because of this, my husband blamed me for failing to raise our daughter properly. Our eldest son's wedding was also delayed, filling him with resentment, and he would lose his temper at the slightest provocation. The shoe factory wasn't doing well either, and my side hustle was reported, costing me my job. That period could be described as beset with troubles both at home and abroad. Moreover, my husband's family consulted a fortune teller who claimed that our daughter was a jinx, bringing bad luck to the household. Gradually, I too began to resent her. As a result, the rift between mother and daughter grew ever wider. Later, the national policy was fully liberalized, encouraging the development of the private economy. I was pushed to the brink, my courage grew, and I could endure hardship, so I took the plunge into business, and life gradually improved. During this time, I also asked others to look for my daughter, only to learn that she was not doing well. When she was with the carpenter, her body was badly injured, leaving her unable to bear children. The man she eloped with was no good either, relying mostly on my daughter to support him. I paid off that man with money and arranged a promising young talent for my daughter. My intention was to make it up to her, but when my daughter found out, she flew into a rage, accusing me of trying to control her life again. My husband and eldest son also said she was ungrateful and deserved her worsening life, that it was all her own doing. We had a huge fight then. She accused me of ruining her life and vanished from my world, cutting all ties with me completely. I only know that my youngest son would occasionally help my daughter, but whenever I went along to visit, my daughter would drive me out of her home. It wasn't until I was bedridden with paralysis and had no one to care for me that my now aged and weathered daughter took me into her cramped and narrow home. Meanwhile, the husband I thought would be my companion in old age was busy being affectionate with the lover he missed in his youth. Not a single one of my eldest son or those blood-sucking relatives from my husband's family who clung to me for support ever asked about me, leaving me to fend for myself. The youngest son only cared about hanging out with his good-for-nothing friends. At this thought, the angry blood in my body burned once again. Following the route in my memory, I smoothly returned to the home assigned by the factory. The brick house had poor lighting and was small in space, but it had a separate little courtyard. However, the kitchen was still shared with neighbors, and going to the toilet required walking several hundred meters. In this era, being able to live in such a house is already a blessing. The entire home has only 2 rooms. My husband and I share one room, our 2 sons share another, while our daughter only has a folding cot that is put away during the day and unfolded at night. In my past life, when I resented my daughter, I only thought she was ungrateful, nitpicking, and always holding on to trivial old grudges against her parents. It used to be taken for granted that in every household, sons were prioritized. Whether it was resources for education and work or food and drink, everything was given to the sons first. This was true in my parents' home, among the neighbors, and everywhere else. Everyone believed in one principle: raising sons ensures support in old age. The eldest son and eldest daughter were close in age, but new clothes were always worn first by the son, and new toys were always played with first by the son. Looking back now, it just makes my heart ache and my eyes well up with tears. I keep saying that my heart is the same for both my daughter and son, but in the end, she keeps getting the short end of the stick in every big or small matter. Today, because of the forced marriage issue, she refused to be taken advantage of anymore. A group of family members, under the guise of doing what's best for her and giving parents peace of mind, began to emotionally blackmail her. I was overwhelmed with shame and couldn't bring myself to look my daughter in the eye. "Mom, are you really going to divorce Dad?" my daughter asked, her face full of anxiety, her slender fingers twisting the hem of her clothes, her 2 thick, long braids hanging down her body. "I don't want to cause you and Dad to divorce, and I don't want Grandma and Grandpa to bully you. If there's really no other way, I'll just get married." At this point, my daughter lowered her head, her voice already trembling with tears, looking at my 17-year-old daughter in the prime of her youth. I thought of how life and time had aged her beyond her years. The tears I'd been holding back finally fell. This is my daughter, kind, pure-hearted, always thinking of her useless mother. She stood up for me, yet I let her down time and time again. In my past life, scolding and beating didn't make my daughter yield, but my tears and complaints did. She agreed to drop out of school and marry someone she didn't want to. I pulled my daughter into a tight embrace, stroking her back over and over. This time, Mom won't back down. You can study as long as you want, until you don't want to anymore. Even if you marry, it should be to someone you love. Don't think about others, and don't think about me either. As long as you're happy and content, that's all I could ever wish for in this life. I'll always be your support. No matter when you look back, I'll always be here. My daughter stared at me as if she didn't recognize me, then suddenly burst into loud sobs and hugged me tightly. Those who have never received favoritism will be moved to tears even by mere verbal promises. This time, I want to give all my love to my daughter alone. I will strive to give her the best life possible. The first thing is to set aside a separate room for my daughter. The room isn't big, but it can fit a bed, a desk, and comes with a small desk lamp. The bed has new sheets and a warm new quilt. The eldest son had just come home and started complaining the moment he saw the situation, grumbling that there was barely any room to turn around in the house. He then went straight into the partitioned room and took away the new quilt and desk lamp. As the eldest grandson in the family, of course the new things should go to me first. Then, without a second thought, he tossed the old quilt onto his sister's bed. The younger son chimed in, "Hasn't sis always slept on the camp bed? Let her keep sleeping there." Grandpa said girls don't need to be treated too preciously. "Why does sister have an egg in her bowl? I don't have one." Grandma said girls eating eggs is a waste of food. With that, he immediately reached out with his chopsticks to take the egg from his sister's bowl. My daughter held onto her bowl, wanting to say something but ultimately not resisting, as was her habit. I looked at my self-righteous eldest son and my spoiled, willful youngest son, then sharply slapped away the younger one's chopsticks before turning to the eldest and speaking sternly. "Take the desk lamp and the quilt to your sister's room, and your sister can eat as much as she wants. From now on, anyone who dares to mention grandma at home can get out, just like your father." Lately, my husband has been staying at his parents' house as a form of protest, making it clear that their Jong family has no place for a wife as disgraceful as me, waiting for me to beg him to come home. The eldest son acted as if he hadn't heard, sitting back down in his chair with a frown. "Mom, stop being unreasonable. Dad's right. Women are nothing but trouble." After speaking, he even gave a sidelong glance at my daughter sitting beside me. "And if you don't get married, so be it. You can stay at home for a few more years. You're my sister, and your bride price will definitely be used for me to get a wife." The 17-year-old eldest son had already mastered the Jong family's ways quite well. With a slap, I directly gave him a smack. "Mom, are you really as crazy as Dad said?" The eldest son covered his face, exclaiming in shock. The youngest son widened his eyes, noodles half-stuffed in his mouth, slipping out. Both sons and their father were of one mind, always talking about what Dad said, what Grandpa and Grandma said. I said coldly, "If you want to keep living here, from now on, you do as I say. Now, either return what's mine, or get the hell out. You're insane. Absolutely insane." The eldest son glared furiously, his youthful stature imposing as he stood up. Yet I met his gaze fearlessly with equal fury. In that instant, my eyes burned with anger and disappointment at his past life's actions, freezing him momentarily in place. He shouted angrily, "Fine, you madwoman, drive us all away, then see who'll take care of you in your old age. Don't tell me you actually think you can rely on a girl. Don't come crying to us later." With that, he slammed the door and stormed out. The younger son followed suit, putting down his bowl, glaring at us angrily, and shouting, "Brother, wait for me." As he ran out, I indifferently averted my gaze. My disappointment in them had long since reached its limit. My husband placed great importance on our eldest son's education, never letting him slack off and constantly pushing him, which barely got him into high school. On the contrary, my daughter, who received little attention, managed to get into the same high school through her own abilities and self-discipline. Ever since my eldest son entered high school, I've basically agreed with whatever he says. He has even begun to see himself as another master of the household, showing me less and less respect. It wasn't until I achieved success in business that my son started treating me kindly again. Then, using various excuses such as needing someone to take care of his grandson and that I should enjoy family happiness. He, along with Ezra Jong, persuaded me to relinquish my authority. As for my youngest son, because of his young age, I didn't have many expectations for him. Unexpectedly, as he grew older, he became more and more irresponsible, spending his days indulging in food, drink, and entertainment, without doing a single proper thing. But when I needed them the most, there wasn't a single reliable person by my side. Thinking back to those desperate days lying in bed, my eyes are filled with rage. Mom, my daughter was also frightened by what she saw before her. I suppressed my look of disgust and placed the egg from my bowl into hers. It's okay, from now on, it'll just be the two of us living well together. I mean what I say, you just need to do what you love. But Dad and them, what if they really don't come back? My daughter, though delighted by the sudden affection, couldn't help but feel a mix of confusion and worry. It's just as well if you don't come back. One less thing for me to worry about, I thought to myself, but not wanting to worry my daughter, I ruffled her hair. Don't worry about it, you don't need to concern yourself with family matters. Your top priority next year is studying hard for the college entrance exam. Didn't you say you wanted to apply to art school? Go ahead and aim high. I'll save up for your tuition. My daughter loves painting and dreams of becoming an artist. In the past, this was something she never brought up on her own. Back in those days, not long after the college entrance exams were reinstated, even those aiming for university often opted for more practical majors. Many girls were deprived of the chance to attend high school or college, pressured by their families into nursing or teaching schools, all to better serve their future families. Thank you, Mom. My daughter suddenly looked up at me, her eyes sparkling with surprise and joy. I used to blame my daughter for being emotionally distant from her two brothers, lacking familial affection, and called her selfish and heartless. Now I realize it was all due to parental inaction, favoritism, and bias. In the past, if the eggs in my daughter's bowl were snatched away, I would have definitely told her not to be petty and to let her younger brother have them. If her new quilt was taken, I would have just said the old one was still usable, that we're all family, and not to make a fuss. After a few such incidents, my daughter naturally became the quiet, obedient, and uncomplaining child in the family's eyes, because she knew that even if she fought or argued, it would make no difference, while doing my utmost to make amends to my daughter. I've also begun seeking new career opportunities. Earning money is now my top priority. The shoe factory's profits are getting worse. In the past, everyone complained about the hardship of working 3 shifts, but now they are eager to get more shifts. However, I voluntarily reduced my shifts. The team leader in charge of scheduling at the factory was puzzled, but I calmly said, my child is taking the college entrance exam at home. However, judging by the looks in my colleagues' eyes, I knew they didn't believe me. Instead, their expressions immediately began to spread gossip. The county town isn't big, and many people know about the falling out between me and my husband's family. Some gossip has already started saying I'm restless, that I don't appreciate a gentleman as courteous as Mr. Jong. Ezra Jong has an excellent reputation outside, while in others' eyes, I'm just a rude and ignorant shrew. After all, I would roll up my sleeves and argue with people over a penny's difference in vegetable prices. Whenever someone mentioned in front of Ezra Jong that he married a shrew, he would always smile and say, Hua Huan has been kind to me. I can't let her down. Another wave of good reputation was earned. When passing through streets and alleys, a group of people who were chatting suddenly fell silent, only to start pointing fingers after I walked away. In the past, I would have rushed to argue with them, then desperately tried to please my husband and son, hoping to show others that my family was normal and happy. But now, I turn a blind eye to all of this. I took out my savings and bought a batch of fashionable items like bell-bottoms and stockings to set up a street stall. Although street vending hasn't been completely deregulated yet, the enforcement isn't as strict as before. As long as no one makes it an official issue, authorities tend to turn a blind eye, seeing how hard I worked. My daughter would cook meals and bring them to my stall as soon as she got home from school. On weekends, she'd keep me company at the stall while holding her books. I told her several times to go home, rest properly, and focus on her studies, and not to let her classmates see her there. My daughter just smiled and shook her head. Working hard to earn money is nothing to be ashamed of. In my eyes, Mom, you're the most beautiful, My heart warmed, and I squeezed my daughter's hand tightly. The woman selling CDs at a nearby stall was named Jonglu. When I first arrived, she helped me a lot, she said with a smile. You're blessed. This daughter of yours is worth every bit of love and care you've given her. After a busy month like this, the income was quite substantial, already matching what would have been earned working at the shoe factory for over half a year. My daughter had never seen so much cash before, and her eyes widened in amazement. The newly opened department store sold ready-made clothes without requiring fabric ration coupons. Though the items were slightly more expensive, though my daughter was somewhat reluctant, I didn't hesitate to take her to buy 2 long dresses and a pair of the most fashionable pearl-embellished wedge sandals at the time. My daughter, who used to wear dull and drab clothes all day, has transformed into the most fashionable and beautiful girl in the alley and even at school. Her growing confidence is evident, and her personality has become much more lively. Watching her radiant smile, my feelings are complicated. I never knew my daughter could shine so brightly in my past life, because she was never given any special favor. Even though her features were fine, she lacked confidence entirely, slouching and shrinking, just a plain and awkward girl in the crowd. I began to pamper my daughter even more, but I noticed her growing increasingly anxious in front of me. She could still manage to keep a bit of happiness, but the moment she turned away, her face was full of sorrow. It happened to be the weekend, and I had finished selling my goods early, planning to go home and make chicken soup to nourish my daughter. That was when I finally discovered the real reason for her unhappiness. Before I even entered the courtyard, I heard my eldest son's domineering voice. Don't think that just because Mom is nice to you now, you can get all high and mighty. Everything in this house will be mine sooner or later. And mine too, the younger son parroted. Mom said she won't leave anything for you. The daughter retorted, oh, you're not really buying into this, are you? She's just angry right now, trying to coax you into marrying the carpenter. The eldest son said, think about it. Has there ever been a time when Mom and Dad fought and it didn't end with Mom giving in, begging Dad to come back? Dad, isn't that right? The husband's voice was filled with obvious pride. Your mother was shameless even when she was young. If I hadn't married her, who else would have wanted someone like her? Uneducated and crude. At this point, the husband snorted coldly. Spending time with your mother has made you even more unsophisticated. Your teacher said you want to apply to art school. What a pipe dream. That's not true, the daughter weakly retorted. Mom said girls can pursue what they want too. Before she could finish, the husband cut her off sharply. It's only been a few days, and you've already learned to talk back. If I divorce your mother, it'll be all your fault. Just look at yourself, dressed up like that. Where's the decency of a proper woman? Where's all the money in the house? The eldest son shouted. I told you before, bring it to school. But you made us come all the way here. Hand it over now, or don't blame me for what happens next. I stood outside the door, fists clenched, unsurprised by their arrival. These 3 lived with the Jong family, eating and sleeping there. Given the Jong couple's stingy nature, they probably didn't treat them well either. I've had quite a few people notice that I've been setting up a stall outside to earn money. Especially after buying quite a few things for my daughter, it inevitably drew some attention. I'll beat you to death. Suddenly, my eldest son's voice came from behind the door, accompanied by my daughter's screams and my younger son's shouts. Brother, didn't you say you wouldn't hit anyone? I flung the door open and roared. Stop that. All 4 people in the room turned to look at me. The husband's face was stern and livid, his eldest son's raised hand frozen mid-air, to my surprise. The younger son actually spread his arms and shielded his sister. I first checked on my daughter and, relieved to find she was only frightened but not actually hurt, let out a sigh. The eldest son lowered his hand. Seeing his father nod at him as if receiving an imperial decree, his face brimmed with smugness. Mom, Dad said you should hand over all the family's money. At this point, he paused and pointed at his daughter standing nearby, then let her go and apologize to her grandparents. Obediently get married, and I'll pretend this incident never happened. You 2 can continue being husband and wife, otherwise, I'll file for divorce with the organization tomorrow. The daughter's face instantly turned pale. The eldest son and the husband looked very much alike, both slightly raising their chins as they looked down at me, their eyes filled with disdain and arrogance. The father and son are equally disgusting. Did I really not know in my past life? I was just deceiving myself. always bound by outdated notions. Marry a chicken, follow the chicken, marry a dog, follow the dog. I even thought that as an uneducated woman, I was lucky to marry someone as talented and respectable as Ezra Jong, a teacher. But now, I've long had enough. All right, I said, walking over to take my daughter's hand, cold and damp with sweat. The light in her eyes when she looked at me suddenly faded. I silently squeezed her hand and gave her a comforting glance. My husband's tightly pressed lips abruptly relaxed, curling up almost imperceptibly. His eyes filled with a look that said, "I knew it." The eldest son also let out a sigh of relief. It's about time. My room needs to be restored to how it was. I haven't been back for days, and someone's already taken over. The partitioned single room can go to the little brother. I'll keep the big room for myself. He started making arrangements on his own. The husband adjusted his glasses and said arrogantly, "I haven't had a good rest lately. Make me some chicken soup to nourish me. Also, my shoes are uncomfortable. Go buy me a new pair." With that, he and the eldest son were about to walk into the room. I said, "Fine, we'll get a divorce," I replied coldly, freezing both of them in their tracks with that one sentence. "Oh, I forgot to tell you. I've already submitted the divorce report to the organization, just waiting for approval. You'd better submit a divorce report to the school as well, so we can get the divorce certificate sooner." They turned around abruptly, their faces filled with disbelief. Holding my daughter's hand, I walked over and stood in front of them. "This is the house assigned to me by the company. I've already packed all your belongings. Since you're back now, take your things and get out. You. My husband forgot all about restraint, pointing at me in shock, unable to utter a single word for a long time. The eldest son glared with wide, furious eyes. "You're insane, absolutely insane. What's the matter? Can't survive without a woman to earn money for you?" I sneered. I used to always save face for him, so outsiders thought he was the breadwinner, but in reality, his meager salary, split between supporting his parasitic parents and maintaining his so-called refined hobbies, not only didn't contribute to the household, but often I was the one subsidizing him. Exposed, my husband's face flushed crimson with embarrassment. "You shrew, divorce. We're getting divorced tomorrow." With that, he flicked his sleeve and turned to leave. The eldest son's expression shifted from shock to disgust. "Mom, how could you treat Dad like this? He was right. A tiger fallen to the plains is bullied by dogs. He should have married Aunt Liu, who is cultured and reasonable. Not a resentful woman like you who can't even read a single word." After speaking, he also turned to leave. Halfway out, he turned back and added viciously, "If you make our lives miserable, don't expect to have it easy either." The youngest son, only 10 years old, was terrified by the scene before him. He turned to follow his older brother but was shoved aside. "Get out of my way." The youngest son fell to the ground with a thud, his eyes brimming with tears, wanting to cry but not daring to. The daughter walked over, helped him up, and seeing that I didn't object, led him inside. The little boy timidly looked up at me. A far cry from his previous spoiled and willful self. Children are the most astute. They know who treats them well. Living with his father and brother at the Jong household, he must not have had a good life. That old couple from the Jong family are the most selfish and self-serving, always just running their mouths and coaxing the children. As for this youngest son, my feelings are mixed. I've always indulged his every demand and never taken responsibility for disciplining him, to be honest. I've neglected him in many ways. Considering he still knows how to protect his sister, there's still hope for him. Ezra Jong didn't immediately file for divorce with the organization, but I was reported for speculation and profiteering. The shoe factory manager looked serious when summoning me for a talk, demanding that I take it seriously, conduct a thorough self-criticism, and even suspended me to reflect at home. My daughter was very nervous, but I remained calm. Anonymous reports are nothing more than jealous people who can't stand to see others doing well. The neighbors were all whispering, too afraid to come up and talk to me, fearing they might get implicated. I don't really care much. In the past few years, anyone involved in speculation would immediately be sent to labor reform. However, nowadays this isn't considered a big deal. At worst, you just get fired. For many people, being fired after over 20 years in the factory is a huge deal. But I know this state-owned shoe factory won't last much longer anyway. It's just a matter of sooner or later. To my surprise, Ezra Jong finally filed for divorce with the organization. He prides himself on being an intellectual, upright all his life, and couldn't bear any stain on his reputation. The organization even came to mediate. But neither he nor I would back down from the divorce. I had been racking my brains over how to dissolve my marriage with Ezra Jong, because in the 1980s, although freedom of marriage was already advocated, if a woman initiated a divorce and the man disagreed, it was highly likely the divorce wouldn't go through. I had already submitted my divorce application to the organization, but they kept telling me to think it over again and not act impulsively. After all, the saying better to demolish 10 temples than break up a marriage was deeply ingrained in people's bones. Moreover, I knew the Jong family quite well. They wanted both money and face, the classic case of eating soft rice with a tough attitude. In my previous life, when I was forced to set up a street stall, they never gave me a kind look, especially Ezra Jong, whose disdain for me was practically written all over his face. Yet when his family had major or minor expenses, he never hesitated to take money from me. I became the first woman in this alley to get divorced. On the day I received my divorce certificate, I deliberately prepared a table full of delicious dishes to celebrate my escape from misery. My daughter is still somewhat sad. She's deeply sentimental and loyal. Otherwise, in our past life, even after I had broken her heart, she wouldn't have taken care of me tirelessly without complaint. As for my youngest son, he doesn't even realize the impact of this matter. His biggest headaches every day are doing homework and household chores. In the past, whenever he was asked to help, my husband and eldest son would start quoting "A gentleman stays away from the kitchen," and the youngest would follow their example. Now, if he doesn't do the work, he has to go hungry and stand in punishment. After a few futile attempts to resist, he has no choice but to obediently comply. Unexpectedly, my younger son turned out to be smarter than I had imagined. After he scored full marks twice in a row, I bought him a bicycle too when I got one for my daughter, which made him happy for a long time. Before going to bed, he awkwardly imitated his sister and thanked me, looking at his tender little face. I ruffled his hair. The boy didn't say anything, but his eyes were shining. Looking back, while I claimed to love him, I had actually neglected him quite often. Well done, no praise; poorly done, no punishment. He was also often influenced by the Jong family, and over time, his words and actions became increasingly improper. As for the eldest son, he is already fully set in his ways, and I hold no hope for him whatsoever. I just didn't expect that, despite his young age. The things he does are becoming more and more repulsive. I originally thought Ezra Jong divorced me just to avoid being associated with so-called stains. But what I didn't expect was that it was actually our eldest son who acted as a matchmaker, helping his father reconnect with his old flame, Liu Qing'er. The two of them were classmates, and there must have been mutual affection back then. But at the time, Liu Qing'er's parents looked down on Ezra Jong's background and married their daughter off to someone of equal social standing. When I met Ezra Jong, he was also feeling down because of this. At that time, I felt unworthy of the gentle and refined Ezra Jong. But I also believed that one day he would surely recognize my kindness toward him. Holding on to this thought, I kept convincing myself over and over again, especially during those years when I was busy with my career. Ezra Jong became increasingly considerate toward me. I thought that sincerity could move even the hardest heart, believing that all the past hardships were worth it. It wasn't until I was bedridden that I finally saw clearly. Ezra Jong had never really changed. He has always been a selfish and hypocritical scoundrel. His so-called kindness to me was merely because he valued the economic benefits I could bring. In private, Ezra Jong had long since reunited with an old flame he happened to meet. Ezra Jong divorced me just to give Liu Qing'er a legitimate status. The eldest son's family took the initiative to organize the remarriage wedding for their elderly father, hosting a grand banquet for the guests. Relatives on the husband's side were also saying things like separated for decades and lovers finally united. No sorrow is greater than a heart that has died. I could only think that all the sincerity I once had was wasted on the unworthy, but in my previous life, I always believed that Ezra Jong had only reunited with Liu Qing'er in their old age. I had no idea that Ezra Jong and Liu Qing'er had crossed paths so early on. Just 1 month after my divorce from Ezra Jong, news came that he was about to marry the widowed Liu Qing'er. Our eldest son played the role of their matchmaker. It turned out that Liu Qing'er's son was in the same class as him, and he had already become quite familiar with her after their relationship was settled. Our eldest son made a special visit to announce that he wanted to move into Aunt Liu's grand villa to live with them. That boastful, triumphant face extinguished the last shred of mother-son bond one had for him. The tiny baby who once nestled close to me has long since disappeared, whether in this life or the last. Like Ezra Jong, he sees nothing but profit. I chased him out of the house with a broom in hand. I wasn't affected by these matters, apart from taking care of my family. I focused more on making money. Jong Lu, her husband, and I became business partners. Wang Lei was involved in small businesses early on and was reported for profiteering, resulting in a 5-year prison sentence. He had just been released, and Jong Lu was also implicated, being suspended from her job without pay, but neither of them complained. Without formal jobs and essentially barred from government positions for life, they simply decided to set up a street stall together. Sticking by each other through thick and thin. In my past life, when I first started setting up a stall and was being bullied, they helped me a lot. This couple is very hardworking and trustworthy. This time, I actively chose to collaborate with them. My idea is quite bold. Setting up a stall is just small scale. I know many sourcing channels, which products are trending, and at this point in time, individual businesses are becoming increasingly popular in places like Wenzhou and Guangzhou. We hit it off right away, so we went ahead and established a company, obtained the business license, leased a physical store for sales, and also started supplying goods to others, buying and reselling. As the scale expanded, the profits far exceeded my expectations, since I needed to take care of the family and try to avoid business trips. I naturally noticed that my daughter had been feeling down, with poor preparation for her exams. Her performance in 2 consecutive mock exams was unsatisfactory. I told her not to put too much pressure on herself. If she didn't pass, she could retake the year, and if she didn't want to study, she could do whatever she wanted. She hugged me and said okay, but it was still clear that she wasn't in a good mood. After questioning my younger son, I found out that my eldest son and daughter attended the same school, and whenever they ran into each other, he would occasionally mock and ridicule her. I seized the opportunity during a Zhong family banquet for the Liu family to storm in and cause a huge scene. Especially targeting the eldest son, I slapped him several times in a row to vent my anger for my daughter. Before the Zhong family could react and prepare to fight back, Zhong Lu and her husband called for backup. Several burly men stood behind them, backing me up. The elderly Zhong couple were hopping mad, lamenting the disgrace brought upon their family. Ezra Zhong's face was covered in bruises as he supported a refined and delicate-looking woman. This woman must be Liu Qing'er. My first time seeing her in 2 lifetimes. I don't harbor any resentment toward her. After all, it was Ezra Zhong who couldn't keep his pants zipped, and the eldest son was the one eagerly seeking a wealthy stepmother, with or without Liu Qing'er. Ezra Zhong would always find excuses to engage in shady dealings, out of respect for the Liu family's presence. No matter how furious the Zhong family might be, they had to maintain face and couldn't afford to act too unreasonably or shrewishly. The living standards of the Liu family at that time surpassed those of many ordinary households, so the Zhong family dared not reveal their true colors too soon. I finished hitting him, clapped my hands, and in front of everyone and my eldest son, severed ties with him as a mother. With the slap mark still on his face, my eldest son angrily declared, "I don't have a mother as rude and ignorant as you. From now on, Aunt Liu will be my real mother." He wanted to humiliate me, but little did he know, this matter had no effect on me whatsoever. I only said what I wanted to say. "Everyone present here is a witness. If you dare lay a finger on my daughter again, I will fight you to the end. It's not just you, but also your Zhong family. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other." As I turned to leave, I saw the venomous resentment in Ezra Zhong and his eldest son's eyes. The news of my dramatic outburst quickly spread like wildfire. The shoe factory's punishment for me followed soon after. Although I wasn't arrested for speculation and profiteering, I was officially fired by the factory. A colleague I'm familiar with privately mentioned that the whistleblower letters seemed to have been written by the Zhong family. I didn't care about this at all. In fact, I had been prepared for it long ago, since I was no longer an employee of the factory. The house allocated to me was naturally to be taken back. However, to show some humanity, the factory gave me an extra month. allowing me to stay until my daughter finished her college entrance exams, after which I had to move out immediately. Originally, the neighbors who had superficially sympathized with us widows and orphans due to Ezra Jong's remarriage now began a fierce battle to claim the house. Housing was in high demand at that time, and ordinary people's homes were generally too small for their families. Even though the factory hadn't officially decided who would get the housing, many already acted as if it was theirs, openly or subtly pressuring me to move out quickly. In those days, being fired from a state-owned factory and having it recorded in your file was considered shameful, even something that could affect your children's future. As I walked down the street, more and more people would point and whisper. The Jong family walked with their noses in the air, saying it was fortunate they divorced an unlucky star like me to avoid being implicated. Both children were somewhat uneasy about the house situation. My daughter firmly told me she would go wherever I went, even if it meant begging. She would stay with her mother. I told my younger son, I don't know what life will be like in the future. If you want to live with your brother, your dad, and his new family like your brother did, you can leave now. The little boy blinked his eyes, trotted over to pull out some loose change from under the mattress, and walked up to me with his hands raised. Mom, I'll give you all my money. Please don't abandon me. During this time living with us, the little boy could be mischievous, but he was no longer the unreasonable, unruly brat he used to be. Half a month early, I moved with my daughter and the little boy, and through connections, arranged for them to transfer schools from the county to a school in the city. Some schools have already started to relax strict household registration requirements, accepting sponsorship fees to allow children to enroll. It took quite a bit of effort to finally rent a suitable house. In this era, there aren't many houses available for rent. Even if you're willing to spend the money, the options are limited. After moving to the new environment, my daughter's mood noticeably improved. However, my daughter's college entrance exam results were not ideal. During this period, she went through a lot, and the drastic changes in her family still had a significant impact on her mentally. Fortunately, she wasn't as sensitive as before and didn't dwell on it too much. After a few days of feeling down, she picked herself up and started preparing for the retake. In the year my daughter was preparing for the retake, my career also saw new developments. That year, the state strongly supported the development of the individual economy. What was once considered unimpressive self-employment became highly sought after, and many people began venturing into private business. My company got an early start, has stable supply channels, and thanks to the vision of the couple Zhong Lu and Wang Lei, we began engaging in foreign trade, successfully opening up the international market. Our daughter also successfully got into a top-tier university in the country. Unexpectedly, however, she didn't choose an art academy but instead opted for the finance industry. Her face was full of pride as she said, I've thought it through carefully. Painting is just my hobby, but I don't want to become an artist. Now the country is developing rapidly. Our teacher said we're living in the best era, and as long as we work hard, we'll become an important part of New China's thriving economy. I always feel particularly envious when I see Mom and Aunt Zhong Lu in meetings. You've also said that for a company to grow big, it needs highly educated talents. I will work hard to stand on a higher platform, to become Mom's support, and also strive to be a part of China's economic development. As my daughter spoke these words, her eyes sparkled with desire and vitality. Gazing at this vibrant and powerful woman before me, my heart was filled with endless emotions. When given enough support and love, she will grow into a strong, decisive, and radiant woman, rather than a pitiful woman stuck in the mire, constantly trying to prove she is worthy of love. When my daughter graduated from university, she didn't join my company. Instead, through her own efforts, she directly entered one of the country's top real estate firms. That same year, my younger son successfully got into his dream university to study architecture. He is no longer the hyperactive little rascal he used to be. Now he can sit at his desk, completely immersed in drawing for an entire day. On my 47th birthday, my children all took special leave to come home, along with the Zhong Shui and Wang Lei family, celebrating my birthday in my newly purchased villa. On this same day, I once again heard news about Ezra Zhong and my eldest son. Ezra Zhong had long been divorced. As the Liu family simply couldn't tolerate the Zhong family's shameless demands. At this time, Liu Qing'er was still relatively young, After making up for the regret of her family's previous opposition to their relationship, she could finally see Ezra Jong's true colors. And any romantic feelings she had for him quickly faded. The Liu family was not one to be trifled with. No matter how much Ezra Jong resisted divorce, he had no say in the matter. Their eldest son failed to get into university and, relying on the Liu family's connections, managed to secure a job at a well-known local electrical appliance factory. Unfortunately, within just 2 years, the factory's performance declined, and layoffs began. Since then, he had been idle and without purpose. The Jong family's attitude was ruthlessly pragmatic. Ezra Jong's meager teacher's salary couldn't satisfy their vanity, so they drove both father and son out of the house. The mask of a loving family has long been torn off. Descending into utter chaos, the Jong family turned on each other like dogs, erupting into another violent conflict, even resorting to knives. After the eldest son stabbed his uncle to death, he went to Ezra Jong demanding money to flee, but failing to get it, they ended up in a fight. Ezra Jong had his leg broken and then selflessly reported his own son to the police. Ezra Jong was bedridden, and after just half a year of care from the elderly Jong couple, he passed away in his sickbed, covered in bedsores before his death. These events occurred 3 years ago. The eldest son had initially inquired everywhere and visited the company several times, but each time, Jong-lu stopped him, even hiring people to intimidate him into leaving, without revealing any information about me, our daughter, or our youngest son. Sister Hua Huan, you don't think we're meddling in your affairs, do you? Jong Shui asked. Having worked together for many years, she was well aware of the situation in my family. Seeing that I didn't answer immediately, she grew a bit anxious. Lazy criticized me. But I just can't stand his arrogant attitude. He said you're his mother, that you owe him, and even threatened to settle accounts with you on behalf of his father, claiming it's all your fault that they ended up like this. I really wish you'd never have anything to do with him again. But after hearing this news recently, I thought, after all, he is your son. I hugged Jong Shui, cutting off her flustered explanation, and sincerely said, "Thank you." She instantly relaxed but still seemed hesitant, glancing at her daughter and younger son chatting and laughing not far away. Both of them were tall and striking in appearance, especially the daughter, dressed in a black gown with her hair elegantly pinned up, revealing her fair neck. She wore the pearl necklace and earrings I had gifted her for her birthday last year, exuding both grace and intellect. "Do we need to tell them?" Jong-lu asked. I shook my head. From the moment I was reborn, Ezra Jong had already become a thing of the past. I don't want such people to appear in my daughter's life again. The sacrifices of my past life were due to my own foolishness, and I've already received the punishment I deserved, in this life. I've protected the most important and worthy person, and that's enough. Mom, Aunt Jong-lu, what are you talking about? My daughter called out cheerfully. Come cut the cake, she's here. I looked at my elegant and poised daughter, my face full of smiles. My daughter and younger son came up to hold my hands, standing on either side of me, teased by Jong-lu and Wang Lei as if we were the two generals of mighty magic. Outside, the cold wind blew fiercely, while inside, it was as warm as spring. I welcomed a new year of my life. The 1980s had already ended, and the 1990s quietly brought new vitality. Life goes on. I want to give my daughter the best life possible, though it may sound a bit boastful, but indeed, under my care and with her younger brother's affection, my daughter has grown into the wonderful person she was meant to be. She has a career she loves, the courage to explore the world, and the freedom to choose her own partner. Perhaps she too will face setbacks and feel weary, but whenever she grows tired, I will always be her steadfast support.